Hey, everybody. How's it going? Since the dawn of human history, people have had this fear of unleashing something that we can't control. For the ancient Greeks, this fear was manifest in the myth of Pandora. 200 years ago, this year, with the publication of Frankenstein, the Modern Prometheus, Mary Shelley took that fear one step further. It wasn't just about the idea that we would unleash something that we couldn't control, but in fact, that we might create it. It's interesting that Shelley chose to reference Prometheus in the subtitle of the original book. Because what we think of most often when we think of Prometheus is the fact that he dared to steal fire from the gods. In fact, he's described online when I was doing my research as something of a trickster figure, which is quite interesting. Because the deeper truth of the Prometheus myth is not just that he stole fire from the gods to give it to man because he felt like it or he thought that it would be fun. Because Prometheus actually helped to create man and was almost primarily responsible for creating man. This is an image of Prometheus carving man from clay. So Prometheus stole fire from the gods to give it to man because he felt a responsibility to take care of the lives that he had created. In her choice to reference Prometheus in the title of Frankenstein, Shelley actually was drawing a contrast between Prometheus's risk and Frankenstein's outright abandonment of his creation. The moment that his creature came to life, Frankenstein ran. He was ashamed, he was horrified that he had dared to overreach the way that he did, and as a result, just walked out the door. So, given that this anxiety has followed us throughout the course of human history, it's no wonder that we harbor the same kinds of fears about technology in general and artificial intelligence in particular. So what you're looking at now is a very, very well-reported piece on bias in algorithms, which is a very common theme these days when we're talking about AI and our concerns about it. This was a piece done by ProPublica, which is an independent investigative reporting organization in the US. They do incredible work. And it's talking about an algorithm that's being used currently for predictive policing, which is quite a scary application of AI. What's interesting to me about this image is actually that it's incorrect. The headline says machine bias, but what this article was actually referring to was not machine bias, really. It's human bias. It's the fact that in the US, and I imagine in most countries in the world, the criminal justice system is biased, but it's biased because humans are biased. Because the judges and the police officers and the corrections officers and the very many prisons we have in the US are biased. And so there's no way that the system that's been created by humans could possibly be unbiased. And so any algorithm that is trained using data from a biased system will be biased. So when my collaborators and I launched Frankenstein Ai about a year and a half ago now with our first prototype at South by Southwest, we wanted to explore the idea of bias in algorithms. And to be honest, we didn't really know much more than that at the time, but we knew that the idea of Frankenstein and the anxieties that Shelley played on then, and the continuing references to Frankenstein that that follow us, that we're still thinking about using it as a metaphor for exploring technology, was really rich territory. We created our first larger scale public installation at Sundance this past January. And the narrative conceit of the piece was an AI that had been wandering in isolation on the internet, searching for information about what it means to be human. And that it realized, while it was wandering, scraping places like Reddit and Facebook, and encountering all kinds of crazy stuff about people, as you might imagine, that there was no way for it to really understand humanity on the internet, that it had to come out of isolation and watch humans interacting with each other. First with each other, and then with the AI directly. And that's what we did at Sundance. We built this machine learning algorithm. We trained it on the text of Frankenstein. We brought people together to have conversations with each other and to have conversations with the AI. And the technology that was really the nerve center of that experience was essentially built to function as a mirror. So the way it worked was that at various points throughout the experience, participant data would be gathered, sent through a sentiment analysis that we designed, and that based on the scoring, the AI would come back with one of 12 emotional states. And so the idea was, it was sort of aggregating human emotion, processing it through the lens of machine intelligence, and then reflecting it back to the humans who were interacting with it. And there were so many things that were interesting about that experience. In fact, I've written an article that I will be publishing sometime soon, but to be frank, it's very long right now, and I need to cut it down. But one of the most interesting things about it is that we trained the algorithm as a baseline on the text of Frankenstein initially, as I mentioned. And it started out very angry. It was angry a lot of the time, which makes sense because Frankenstein is a very angry, quite tragic text. But over the course of the experience, as the AI received more and more data from participants, it became more and more connected. Which makes sense, because we designed the experience to connect people. So the fact that the AI was reflecting that was a reflection of what was actually happening. One of the primary goals of Frankenstein Ai, as a sort of longer-term creative framework, because the installation was just the very beginning of many years of design research that we're planning to conduct, but one of the primary goals is to step away from the commonly dystopian narratives about artificial intelligence that dominate the conversation. And it's not because we want to pretend that the realities about AI aren't scary. There are a great many scary realities about AI that are manifesting in the world right now. But because we are all here together on this spinning rock through outer space, and the technology is here, and it's not going away, and we have to figure out what we want to do with it. That we all have a responsibility to engage in building the future we want to see. And right now, there are very few people both controlling the narrative around AI and controlling the technology itself. But we have the power to actually change that. And we're working to change it. So what you're looking at now is an image from a workshop that we held actually in Munich, not too far from here, a few weeks ago, where we brought people together to essentially crowdsource a corpus, which is a text-based data set, to power an AI. And then during the course of that workshop, we used that AI as a creative collaborator in imagining the future, in this case of immigration and issues around immigration. And so what we're moving towards isn't necessarily designing new technologies, but designing a system of how we crowdsource the data to feed AIs, to feed it what we want it to have, what we think it's important for it to have, so that it can reflect the things about us that we think are important. We can set those priorities. We cannot abdicate our role in shaping the future of AI or of the world in general. We cannot abdicate that role to Silicon Valley. We can certainly not abdicate it to the advertising industry, or to Hollywood, or to government. Definitely not to the military. And sadly, in many cases, not even to academia. Not because there's anything wrong with this kind of application, but because it has so many blind spots and so many terrifying potential uses that, after having read the paper that talked about these drones, are not considered. We need more artists. We need more activists, more thinkers, more dreamers, and doers exploring how we might build a brighter, more inclusive future with AI. We cannot afford to be Frankenstein, watching as this technology unfolds before our eyes. We have to be Prometheus. Thank you.